Welcome to the Museum Roadshow. I'm Roger Engstrom. Today we're visiting with Orlo and Ellen Gilbert, and they're going to share with us their memories of this 1941 Ford station wagon.
All right, I think I'll have Ellen start out with the history of this 41 Ford station wagon that you're looking at. It belonged to her parents, and you tell them how it came to be.
In the fall of 1940, my parents used to go back and forth to Florida. My dad was my dad and mother were nurses, and my dad was a special duty nurse for a very wealthy steel man from out of Wisconsin. So my father would go first to Florida, and then my mother would follow with my older sister and I. Sally was not born yet. And in the fall of 1940, I guess they decided they needed a bigger car, so they went to Sarasota, Sarasota Ford dealership, and my mother saw this 41 Woody on the showroom floor, and my mother said, "I'll take it." And so my older sister Sally remembers Mother driving off the showroom floor with the car. I do not remember that, but from then on until I suppose it was in the early 50s, my folks used this as a regular car, and we went from California to Florida to Ohio to California to Florida to Ohio to Minnesota in that car. I cannot tell you how many times. And my older sister and I, she always had earaches and I always got car sick, and we'd fight about who would have the window open and who would have the window closed. And we have lots of memories in this car. And of course, in those days you didn't have a lot of fast food places or restaurants to stop, so my folks always packed lunches. And we'd stop at a little wayside park, and my dad would pull down the tailgate and get out the little ice box, and we would have our liverwurst sandwiches and our drinks, and those were good memories when we'd travel from coast to coast. Then during the Second World War, my dad went to work in the Kaiser shipyards in Richmond, California. So that was a war-related thing, so he would not have to go overseas. Of course, we had the Woody, and the government wanted to take the Woody for services overseas to use as vans for ambulances, I guess they would use it. But since my mother was a Red Cross nurse, and that was a related agency to the war, they let her keep the Woody. Otherwise, they would have taken the car away from my folks, as they did to a lot of people who had Woodies. So, therefore, we were able to keep this in the family until my folks finally started using it. My dad used it as a kind of like a truck, and had his tools all in it. And I remember my sister's 8th grade graduation from District 80. The roof leaked, and we all had umbrellas. We were holding up our umbrellas in the car as we went over to Holmes High School for our graduation, and we still laugh about that today because the roof leaked so badly. And then comes along Orlo, my husband, who has always loved cars, and he struck a deal with my dad.
Yeah, what was it about? I don't remember exactly. It had to be about 78, 79, somewhere in there. Maybe it was earlier than that. But I asked him what he was going to do with the Woody, because by then he'd just put it in the barn, and it was really in pretty sad shape. It didn't run even anymore, and most of the wood was rotten, and what wasn't rotten had been cut off. And so he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll sell it to you for $250. And Ellen said, "What in the world are we going to do with that?" Well, it sat in the barn for another 10, 12 years, I don't know, but and I didn't do anything. Then as we got near retirement, we decided it was time to save the car. And so we started restoring this car in 1996, I think, and it went to its first show in 2001 in Branson, Missouri. It's been truly a labor of love, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears have gone into and money to saving the vehicle.
Yeah, our mother got to see it, but our father did not get to see it restored. He probably wouldn't have believed it anyway. So.
No, he just thought, what in the world are you doing saving that thing for? But it's really been a lot of fun. We've taken it on a lot of tours. It's won several national awards, and we belong to the Antique Automobile Club of America. and it's won the most prestigious award that club gives out in their special award ceremony in February in Philadelphia. So it's been a real fun thing, and it's been fun to keep it in the family and to keep the history alive of this car.
Another interesting thing about this car is that when my folks were running their resort, the folks in the Caldalls in Fair Hills were running their resort, and they had almost an identical car, and we were the only two station wagons in the area. But they always had their name printed on the side of their car. But the Fair Hills people also had one almost exactly like this.
And your dad said that sometimes, if it was parked in town, the Fair Hills customers would get in this car thinking they were going to go to Fair Hills, because both of them provided service from the train station to the resorts. And so since I'm sure they just said, well, go get in the Woody, thinking that was the only one in town. Well, there happened to be another one. So they had to be sorted out.
I remember one time we went to Newton, Iowa to visit my mother's parents, and it was going to be over Christmas. And that was one of the few winters we stayed here all winter. And my folks had to start out with, we had hot bricks in the back on the floor that we'd put our feet on, and we were wrapped in I don't know how many blankets, and so it was very cold. And it was very hot also. My dad tried to rig up little air conditioners and that kind of thing, but it never worked because, you know, we did go through the desert a lot going to California. But, you know, my sister and I we loved it. It rattled and, you know, kind of was like a wagon in a way because of all the wood. But I have nothing but really wonderful memories. And because I got so car sick, I often would stay in the front seat with my mother because she was the one who usually drove it, because my dad was already at one of the places or the other in California or Florida. And I'd put my head on my mother's lap and sleep on her lap almost the entire trips because it was so comfortable in that front seat.
She still likes to sleep when we drive. But tell them about the blowout.
Oh, when we were, my mother was taking us to Florida. My dad was already in Sarasota. Of course, blowouts in these cars were very common, and so I can remember going to lots of garages and waiting around for them to patch the inner tubes. But this time we were out kind of in a no man's land in Florida, and wild pigs were running around, and we were right by a bridge. And my mother pulled over to the side, and she saw a gentleman walking way ahead of over the bridge, and she started yelling at him, and he started running. And she started running after him, and she finally caught him, and he thought the Japs were shooting at him. But he did come and help Mother change the tires, but he had fingernail polish on his hands. He was just a character.
And he said he'd never fixed a tire on a car. He didn't know what to do.
Yeah, but he did help her, and he did think the Japs were shooting at him. That's why he was running. He wasn't running away from Mother. But anyway, that's when Florida was still pretty
primitive.
Pretty primitive.